What's up? This is Dr. Taylor Krick, host of the Autoimmune Doc podcast, and here on my YouTube channel I review studies from the peer-reviewed scientific literature supporting some of the things that I talk about on the podcast, or just interesting things regarding immunology and autoimmunity, especially. This is a really fascinating paper. It connects deep immunology with lifestyle factors that are very modifiable, with also kind of an ancestral perspective of like, this is the way that people have been living for all of eternity, and when we disrupt that, it kind of throws things off health wise. So this is a mini review from Frontiers in Immunology, my favorite journal, from June of 2020, and it's called Circadian Regulation of the Biology of Allergic Disease. Clock disruption can promote allergy. So circadian rhythms, most people have heard of that and they associate it with sleep, right? And it is our sleep-wake cycles. But what science is now discovering, or has discovered, is that over a third of your genes are controlled by circadian mechanisms. So on 24-hour kind of clock rhythms, and controlled by these things literally called clock genes. So not just are you awake, are you asleep, but not everything, but lots of different things, including immunology and inflammation and things like that. So we're going to look at that. So it's really interesting. So allergic diseases such as allergic rhinitis, so like your typical allergies, nose stuff, asthma, atopic dermatitis, and food allergy are characterized by epithelial barrier dysfunction, leaky gut, leaky lung, leaky sinuses, and deregulated immune responses. Components of the circadian clock interact with critical elements of the epithelial barrier, so lungs, gut, sinuses, skin, and immune responses, and regulate the biological process on a 24-hour cycle. This may represent an anticipatory defense response of an attack to a stimuli, such as pathogens in the environment. This review summarizes clock control of epithelial barrier function and immune responses associated with allergic disease, and offers novel insights and opportunities into how clock dysfunction impacts allergic disease. Importantly, perturbation of normal clock activity by genetic and environmental disturbances such as chronic light cycle perturbations or irregular eating habits deregulates epithelial barrier dysfunction and immune responses. So if you are looking at your phone at night, it is creating a leaky gut and immune dysregulation, is what this sentence is saying. If you are eating late at night, if your clock gets disrupted by these things lifestyle-wise that throw our clock off, jet lag, shift work, artificial light at night, then it can deregulate epithelial barrier function and immune responses. This is huge just from the abstract. This implies that the clock is strongly linked to the fundamental biology of allergic disease. Clock disruption can precipitate allergic disease by altering the epithelial barriers and immune function. So, given that contemporary lifestyles often involve circadian disruptions, we propose that lifestyle or therapeutic interventions that align the clock should be part of efforts to prevent or treat allergies in modern society. And obviously, you can read there, I paraphrased a few things, but I didn't leave anything out by any means. But yeah, I think that that's a really heavy statement, is that if you have allergies or you have an autoimmune disease, you should take your circadian rhythm importantly. You should treat it with importance. So, introduction. I'm going to go quick. Allergic disease characterized again by epithelial barrier dysfunction and deregulated immune responses. So what that means too is leaky lung, leaky gut, leaky skin, leaky sinuses. Things need to get into the body for the immune system to have a response against them, especially in the context of an allergic response against them. Talks about these clocks, talks about the oscillators, talks about the clocks, talks about the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus. That's the master clock in your brain that tunes in all the other clocks in the cells to work on the same, rhythm. So there is a master clock, and then all these cells have these clock genes that set this kind of 24-hour rhythm, which, it's wild to say, but yeah. How does circadian disruption occur? I think that that's obvious. Um, Misalignment between the endogenous clock and environmental cycles compromises mental and physical health. Chronic circadian misalignment via night shift work, jet lag, artificial light at night can precipitate or exacerbate mood disorders in susceptible individuals. Shift work is now classified as a possible or probable carcinogen. I forget the World Health Organization classification. Night shift workers, irregular eating habits, higher risk of cancer, heart disease, metabolic diseases, as well as sleep and psychiatric disorders. So that's, obvious when you have shift work, maybe obvious, but I think that the same is true when you just have like, maybe bad habits and you've shifted, you get a lot of artificial light at night. Maybe you're a night owl and you stay up with your phone, with your TV on, with your lights on, and it's disrupting your circadian rhythms that work in conjunction with nature and with the sun, light in the day and darkness at night. Talks about clock control of the barrier dysfunction, and it goes through each one. It goes through the skin, goes through the airways, goes through the gut lining, and again, just talks about how those all work on a clock rhythm, and it goes into the very fine details of that, but they're all on these rhythms. So there are times of the day when those barriers have more integrity, and times of the day where those barriers have less integrity, which is kind of interesting. Now, here's clock control of the innate immune response. So a lot of your immune cells are under clock circadian control, mast cells and basophils, um, which is going to be like a lot of a histamine response. Your macrophages, which are going to be your neutrophils, monocytes, eosinophils. So eosinophils respond to allergies. They respond also to parasites. But they're going through the details of these things. And then the ILCs, so ILCs, ILC2, ILC3. The ILCs are interesting. I'm not going to get into them, I guess, but yeah. So here's a picture that's great. Allergens. Here's your allergens. Here's the epithelial barrier. So we can call this the gut. We can call this the lung. Typically with allergies, we think of lung and sinus. But those things get in. So the barrier is disrupted. The things get in. And all of these things, the barrier is on a clock. The immune response is on a clock. The mast cell response is on a clock. The eosinophils are on a clock. The mast cell degranulation is on a clock. The dendritic cell presentation is on a clock. And that's what this is saying, is that these are all on a clock. Yeah. So again, I don't think we need to talk too much more about it. This is a possible temporal relationship saying that when the epithelial get more leaky, the immune response is the least. Because you don't want an exacerbated immune response at the same time as the main leakiness. That would lead to more inflammation, more problems, more autoimmunity. But they're saying that maybe those are on kind of opposite schedules. Yeah. So I think that, again, this is fascinating. Circadian disrupted modern lifestyle may promote allergic disease. And now this is talking about allergies and true allergies and IgE and mast cells and different interleukins, eosinophils that are associated with allergies. But autoimmunity is in the exact same context. So the same epithelial lining dysfunctions are going to lead to autoimmunity. The same immune dysfunctions are going to lead to autoimmunity. So while this paper is not saying autoimmunity, almost an identical paper could be written in the context of autoimmunity and say, hey, these basophils, these mast cells, these eosinophils, these T helper cells, these B cells, these dendritic cells all work under clock regulation. And if that clock regulation doesn't link up with the epithelial clock regulation, the epithelial integrity, if those timings, aren't coherent, they're interferent, then that's going to lead to problems in health and promote disease. So I think that this is interesting whether you have true allergies or if you have an autoimmune disease. Again, this isn't saying anything about autoimmune disease, but it's a very, very, very similar topic, and it's fascinating either way. Your light exposure matters in a humongous, humongous, humongous way. Your light exposure matters to any metabolic or neurologic or immunologic disease process. It does matter. And I think I didn't mention at the beginning, very beginning, but the Nobel Prize was won in 17 for circadian mechanisms. So this is, not obscure science, but it is new science. So it is really, really important. So hope that's helpful.